The movie opens with a news report about a young man named Gong-min who has been arrested for harassing a female student and assaulting a male student who tried to intervene. Because he's the son of the chairman of one of the country's largest food companies, his case is receiving a lot of attention. Officer Ryo-sai watches the news, looking tense. Her colleagues ask her what's wrong, and she says she's worried about the lawyer who's going to defend this rich kid. The lawyer, Lee Chae-sang, is currently meeting with the family. He's already made arrangements and pulled strings with the judge who will preside over the trial. The trial takes place soon after. The victim recounts what happened, saying that he was walking home when he heard a girl crying. He looked down and saw Gong-min acting inappropriately towards her, so he ran down to intervene. Gong-min then struck him hard in the back with a stick and punched him in the face. Officer Sion, listening in the courtroom, looks very anxious. Chae-sang starts questioning the victim, pointing out that Gong-min's family has offered to settle for 50 million won, but the victim's father is demanding 200 million won. He then presents information suggesting the victim's family is in debt for 200 million won, implying they're trying to extort money. The victim is unable to defend himself. Chae-sang then calls the girl who was involved in the incident to testify, but she's either been bribed or threatened and gives a false account, blaming the victim for the assault. Sion, furious, almost jumps up to confront Chae-sang, but her colleague holds her back. Chae-sang then provides documentation proving that Gong-min was under the influence of antidepressants and alcohol, and therefore incapable of rational thought. Combined with his backroom dealings with the judge, Gong-min is ultimately released. Sion storms out of the courtroom, consumed by anger towards the lawyer. Unable to contain her rage, she runs over to where Chae-sang is talking and kicks him, knocking him to the ground. She then twists his arm and grabs his neck, causing him to choke. Later at the station, her superior reprimands her. She replies that this is always the case. He helps the guilty escape, and they never face punishment. We then cut to a scene where Chae-sang is taking on a new case, still involving the same family but this time related to their food company. The head of the department, while assigning the case to him, warns him that before tackling this, he needs to deal with the accusations of violence made against the family's matriarch. Chae-sang is exasperated by the whole family. His colleague, surprised, asks if he was attacked by Sion again. Chae-sang sighs and says this is the third time. He recalls a time after a trial when Sion stormed over and yelled at him, then hit him with a hammer. Another time she grabbed his hand like she was going to beat him up. But he just shrugged it off, saying he had bigger things to worry about. After her outburst against Chae-sang, Sion is punished by being assigned to traffic duty checking drivers' blood alcohol levels. She pulls over a driver and right after that, Chae-sang pulls up behind him. She gives him a look of contempt and moves on to the next car. Chae-sang, seemingly wanting to speak with her, pretends his car is having trouble and pulls over to the side. Sion sees this and goes to warn him. They exchange a few words before he starts yelling at her, claiming she assaulted him and demanding compensation. She counters that it's animal abuse, not assault, because he's not a human being. He insults her, saying she must be hated by a lot of people. She replies that her life is better than his, since he makes a living by helping bad people get away with crimes. She goes on to say that if she had known what he would become, she wouldn't have helped him 12 years ago. Now, she regrets what she did. The scene then cuts to flashbacks from 12 years ago. Chae-sang is walking home from school at night. As he's relieving himself by the side of the road, a girl runs up to him and grabs him, saying someone wants to kill her. A man approaches, wielding a knife. Chae-sang is terrified. The man stabs twice, but the knife strikes the book Chae-sang is carrying. He manages to knock the attacker unconscious. Later, Chae-sang is brought to the police station for assault, with the attacker demanding 10 million won in settlement. Chae-sang, trying to explain his actions, is met with skepticism from the police officers, who demand evidence. Sion, observing the scene, decides to help him. As Chae-sang is being pressured by the victim's family for more money, Sion brings the girl who was involved in the incident to testify. After the matter is settled, Chae-sang thanks Sion and lets her know that he's successfully resolved the case. Sion is relieved and happy because this is the first case she's been able to contribute to solving. Cut back to the present. Sion is just getting off her night shift when she sees a man standing in front of the police station. After talking to him, he tells her that his daughter called and said someone was following her, then her phone went dead. He rushed to the location she mentioned but only found a button with the letters Samam. the initials of the chairman of the food company from the beginning of the film. His daughter works as a secretary in the chairman's office. He suspects she's been kidnapped by the chairman. Upon hearing this, the chairman's wife immediately calls Chae-sang to her office to deal with the situation. Later, Sion and the father arrive at the office. Chae-sang presents evidence showing that the chairman and the girl had been exchanging affectionate messages, making it implausible that he would kidnap her. After a tense back and forth, everyone leaves to investigate further. While at the parking lot, Sion finds Chae-sang and punches him for mocking and belittling her. They then drive off, stopping the head of their department to get more information. From her, they learn that the chairman's wife, realizing her husband was having an affair, took advantage of his absence to handle the third party herself. She also reveals the location where the girl is being held captive. The scene cuts to the girl, tied up and surrounded by thugs. After receiving this information, Sion and Chae-sang immediately call the police station and head to the location. They arrive and find the place seemingly deserted. They wander around until they reach a room and spot a metal drum. They open it and find the girl's body inside. Chae-sang is sickened and throws up. After dealing with the situation, Sion confronts Chae-sang, blaming him for the girl's death. She claims that if he hadn't dragged things out for the chairman's wife, the girl would still be alive. Sion accuses him of using people's lives to make money. Chae-sang is deeply affected by her words and decides to confront the chairman's wife. When he arrives at her residence, she screams insults at him, but Chae-sang secretly records her confessions and threatens to expose her. She's furious. As he leaves, she calls someone to take care of him. On his way back, Chae-sang calls Sion to meet up and give her the evidence. Unbeknownst to him, a car is following him. The car then crashes into his, sending it spinning before it slams into a roadside barrier. Sion, hearing the loud crash, is horrified. Another truck, waiting nearby, charges towards Chae-sang, ready to finish him off. He wakes up in an unfamiliar place, surrounded by a woman who claims to be his wife. He sees their wedding photo hanging on the wall and is completely confused, wondering what's going on. Not only that, he also had a child with Sion. He thought it was all a dream, and he ran to his law firm in a panic. He barged in, shocking everyone. Chae-sang saw the prosecutor he had mocked before sitting in his law firm with his superior and was incredibly surprised. He made snide remarks which infuriated the prosecutor. After a while of rambling, his superior stood up and scolded Chae-sang, calling him Prosecutor Lee Chae-sang, leaving him stunned. He was then dragged out and Sion followed him, pulling him to the car and informing him about the current situation. Mrs. Sin Chung-hai, the chairperson of the Gungyu Food Corporation, was being investigated for the disappearance of Seo Dong-chu. Her son, Gong-min, whom he had previously helped to escape punishment, was now in prison according to Sion because of Chae-sang. They had been living together for 6 years. After hearing Sion's words, he was stunned for several seconds. He then dressed up and went to his current prosecutor's office. After entering for a while, his colleague walked in and showed him a video showing Seo Dong-chu. In his head, Chae-sang thought this was a dream created by his guilt, a parallel world to help him correct his past mistakes. Relying on his previous memories, he summoned everyone to the house he and Sion had investigated before. He went to a room and saw a metal box. He remembered seeing it in the other world, but when he approached and opened it, there was nothing inside. In this world, they found no clues during the search. Chae-sang was then dragged away by his boss, who scolded him for causing a commotion and allowing the chairperson to escape to another country. Chae-sang decided to call her to the police station to question her about the situation. Her face seemed unfriendly when she arrived. Knowing her weakness, she couldn't stand being mocked, so with just a few questions, Chae-sang made her jump up, gritting her teeth. Seeing that things weren't going her way, her lawyer, sitting beside her, said she wouldn't answer any more questions. He uncharacteristically praised Chae-sang's improved abilities. As she was about to leave, the head of the prosecution received a call ordering the immediate arrest of the chairperson for assaulting her subordinate with confirmed injuries. She was immediately handcuffed. Sion called Chae-sang to the rooftop to talk, asking how he knew the company's confidential information. She thought he had bought it from someone. He yelled at her and said he would make her pay for her actions. Hearing her husband's words, Sion felt he was amazing and cool. The scene then shifted to everyone continuing to investigate data related to Seo Dong-chu's disappearance. Chae-sang said that since she worked in the chairman's office, she would have two phones, a personal one and a work phone. He also discovered that the two phones were not in the same location. They were in the same place during the day, but in different locations at night. Everyone then guessed that the person having an affair with the chairman was not Seo Dong-chu but someone else. As he was thinking, Chae-sang saw the bear on his keychain and said he knew who the person was. Afterwards, Chae-sang called the head of the office, who often went with the chairperson, to talk. He directly stated that she was the one having an affair with the chairman. She kept denying it, so Chae-sang analyzed his findings for her, saying that she used Seo Dong-chu's work phone, which led to the chairperson's misunderstanding and her current situation. Her posture changed from a casual, carefree one to a fearful, upright position. She continued to deny it, but in a stammering tone. Chae-sang said that if she didn't help them find leads, he would expose everything and let the chairperson know that she was the real mistress. She then called the people who kidnapped Dong-chu. The police located their phone and immediately set out to find them. Sion and Chae-sang were walking when she suddenly thought, "Why is Seo Dong-chu still alive?" The chairperson wants to leave the country. They must be planning to flee together and then deal with Seo Dong-chu. They wouldn't dare do anything reckless because this case is being investigated publicly nationwide. Sion then changed direction, heading towards the docks. There, they discovered the kidnappers and Seo Dong-chu preparing to board a ship. Chae-sang was trying to get his phone to call for backup when Sion shouted, "I'm a police officer," and charged forward like a warrior, demanding the hostages. Chae-sang also ran out. Seeing their nonsense, the kidnappers charged at them, ready to deal with them. Sion fought like crazy, telling Chae-sang to run. Two of the kidnappers chased Chae-sang into a wooden crate area, but he managed to subdue them. As he was running back, Chae-sang suddenly saw a high-heeled shoe. Following the trail, he saw two of the kidnappers aiming guns at Seo Dong-chu. He pushed a pile of things onto them and pulled Seo Dong-chu to safety. The kidnapper chased after them, pointing a gun at Chae-sang and threatening to kill him. Just then, the backup team arrived with Sion and shot the kidnapper. Seeing the blood, Chae-sang fainted. Seo Dong-chu was rescued from their clutches. After waking up, Chae-sang went to Seo Dong-chu's hospital room and saw her and her father happy and joyful. He remembered the scene of her death in the other world and the words Sion used to reproach him, feeling incredibly guilty and bursting into tears. As he walked out, he remembered that Sion had gone to look for her. She jumped onto him and kissed him, making him jump and throw her off. She was ecstatic about solving a major case with her husband. Back home, he went to sleep and woke up to his child farting in his face, which startled him awake. He realized he was still in this world and yelled in shock. He couldn't accept this reality. His strange behavior caused both Sion and her daughter to panic. Suddenly, his body stiffened and he fell onto the bed. His eyes seemed to shatter into pieces of memories, and images of him dying on a hospital bed appeared. In the blink of an eye, Chae-sang returned to normal. He rushed to the bathroom to wash his face and discovered a large scar on his hand. While eating, Sion said she would visit his subordinate, but he didn't remember who it was. She told him that the chairperson had tried to kill him by running him over with her car, but instead injured his subordinate. When they'd reached the hospital, the doctor said the subordinate could wake up in a week. Chae-sang became increasingly confused and asked for details about the accident. He went to the records room and found that all the dates and events matched. He thought that he was in a coma in the real world and had fallen into this world. Everything was different from the real world. He could only go back when he woke up in the real world, possibly within a week, as the doctor had said about his subordinate. He was sitting there lost in thought when his subordinate walked in, having been there all along. He jumped in surprise. The subordinate gave him a stack of case files that needed to be addressed, all within a week. So Chae-sang began working on them. There was the case of the elderly woman who pretended to be deaf and kidnapped her husband, then the couple who fought in the interrogation room, pulling the prosecutor's hair, and the brother who tried to escape punishment by pretending to have a seizure by putting soap in his mouth. Chae-sang was at a loss for words with these cases. Sion and his colleague were talking in the hospital when they met a man who looked like he had no good intentions and started to mock them. Sion then said that he was about to run for mayor. She sarcastically said she hoped to see him at the police station, whether for campaigning or investigation, he should give it a try. It turned out that he was Du Sixian, the chairman of a financial corporation. The news was also reporting on his charitable work and announcing his candidacy. Sion watched him, her face appearing dangerous. While feeding an elderly man, he was sprayed with porridge. In front of the cameras, Sion pretended to be concerned, but behind the scenes, he beat the elderly man up. Chastain went to the site of his accident, thinking that if he died there, he might be able to go back. He tried to run into the path of a car, but jumped back when it came racing towards him. He blamed the car for almost killing him. Afterwards, he and everyone else were called to a meeting at the prosecutor's office to discuss a missing person case. The victim was No Dong Mei, who had left home the previous day and hadn't returned. They were tasked with finding her within 24 hours. They all went to the girl's house and met her visually impaired father and her friend. While asking them questions, they noticed that the friend was answering for Dong Mei, which seemed strange to Chastain, so he wanted to go inside. The friend followed them inside, looking uneasy. After everyone left, Chastain decided to meet Dong Mei's friend to get her statement. He asked her if she worked at a nightclub, and she described all the arduous jobs that Dong Mei had done. She said that Dong Mei wouldn't accept that kind of work, no matter what. Then, out of the blue, a group of debt collectors came to her house and demanded that she repay a debt she had already paid off. They'd followed her to her workplace to cause trouble, and Dong Mei was often fired as a result. Others investigated information about Dong Mei and found that each place told a different story, leaving them confused. They all called Dong Mei's father to persuade him to have eye surgery, but he insisted on waiting for his daughter. Chastain then bluntly stated that Dong Mei had run away from home because of the large debt, leaving her father behind. He couldn't accept that his daughter had abandoned him, so he pretended to be scared and made up a story about his daughter being missing to get the police involved. This hit a nerve, and he denied it, sputtering and acting. Chastain said they weren't detectives. They were there to help him find his daughter. Sion went to comfort Dong Mei's father, calming him down. Chastain received news that his subordinate in the hospital was recovering well and might wake up within the next 3 days. He was overjoyed, thinking that when his subordinate woke up, he would also wake up in the other world and return. While he was happy, Sion came in and scolded him for forgetting to pick up their child. When they got there, the child was crying his eyes out, complaining about his miserable life and the boring life they lived. Back at home, he crossed his arms and arrogantly said he wouldn't talk to Chastain anymore. However, when he heard his mother say that his father would read him 10 books in a week, he started playing with his father again. The next day, Sion received a report that a hand had been found in a trash bin. They believed it belonged to Dong Mei because the hand had a ring she often wore. They then received news that Dong Mei's ex-wife suddenly returned to allow her husband to have eye surgery. Sion and her colleague went to meet her. She cried and lamented, accidentally mentioning that her husband would know what to do if he knew his daughter's right arm had been cut off. Sion immediately became suspicious because she hadn't mentioned whether the left or right arm had been cut off. Back at the office, everyone discussed information about the ex-wife and learned that she had a history of professional fraud. She had approached the father and daughter during a social welfare campaign. They also learned that the daughter had purchased life insurance with a death benefit of 600 million won. Everyone suspected the ex-wife, but Chastain stood up and argued that the three of them had conspired to create this case. After the meeting ended, they sent people to investigate further to see if they could find any more body parts, but they didn't find anything. Sion, the chairman of the financial company, invited a famous lawyer to help him with something, and the lawyer readily agreed. Due to being harassed by Sion, Chastain went to the office with a sullen expression, even kneeling down and praising his boss's divorce, saying it was truly a blessing. He was slapped for that. As he was sulking, Sion came in and told him that during the upcoming interrogation of Do Isuk, a lawyer from a law firm would be present. When they arrived, it was the famous lawyer. They said they would be representing Do Isuk. The interview began, and Do Isuk refused to answer any questions, leaving them to her lawyer. Chastain, knowing he couldn't gather any information, went in and told her not to think that those people would help her. In the end, she was just being used. Back outside, everyone was unhappy because they couldn't get any information from the interrogation and had to release her. Chastain said this case was bigger than they thought, with one of the biggest law firms in Korea defending her. Later, Chastain found a young man wearing glasses and told him he would be working with the prosecution team on this case. The young man didn't seem happy about it because he had to work with the person who had put him in prison. After asking, Chae-sang realized that he was the one who had put the young man in jail. He remembered that in the other world, he had defended the young man and proven his innocence, but in this world, it was the opposite. He then persuaded the young man to go to a bar where lawyers and reporters often made deals late at night. He told him to steal the recording tapes there and cut them together to manipulate public opinion. News of the deal between the law firm and reporters was later shown on the news. When the chairman saw this on TV, he was furious, fearing it would affect his candidacy. He called the lawyer, telling him to settle the matter if he wanted to live a good life. Everyone had a meeting and concluded that Dun Mei had become a victim of organ trafficking because her blood type was rare. They then split up and went to the workplaces and people who had threatened Dun Mei to investigate. The team leader and the big guy went to the debt collectors who had previously threatened Dun Mei. As soon as they walked in and said a few words, the two sides started fighting. The leader ran out to his car after the ringleader fled. He thought he was about to escape, but the car wouldn't start. It turned out that the young man had sabotaged the car from underneath. Chae-sang and Sion also went to the place where Dun Mei had previously worked. They confirmed that Dun Mei had worked at that nightclub, contrary to what her friend had said earlier. Some girls told them that the debt collectors always came looking for Dun Mei. She didn't want anything to happen to her father, so she protected him from them. She also had to go through the garbage to find food. They were both heartbroken to hear this. Back at the meeting, they gathered all the information they had collected. Sion said she believed Chairman Du Sichon was behind all this. She said that all the investigation targets were connected to the chairman's welfare institute. Not only that, the son of the representative of the Korean party was going to have heart surgery and needed an organ donor. So he had organized free health checkups in various locations to find a suitable match, and Dun Mei was chosen. At the same time, Chairman Du Sichon wanted to ensure his election victory, so he did this for the Korean party representative. When he understood the problem, Chae-sang realized that Do E-suk was a witness in this case and feared for her safety. They'd all decided to watch over her. Do E-suk was on her way home when she noticed someone following her. She tried to run but was stopped by another man. They dragged her into an alley and tried to inject her with a drug, but she bit them and kicked them before running away. She then ran into Sion's team and was rescued. The lawyer rushed to find the chairman to find out if he was behind her attack, but the chairman denied it. It turned out that Chae-sang had sent people to pretend to be attackers and scare her. When they got back to the prosecutor's office, Do E-suk, terrified for her life, begged Chae-sang for help. She revealed the people involved, including a man called Pastor Pak. She said he had approached Dun Mei's father and daughter to keep an eye on them so Dun Mei wouldn't run away. He had also wanted to buy Dun Mei's organs. Upon receiving this information, Chae-sang instructed the police to apprehend the pastor and investigate the hospital where the organ harvesting took place. Sion and Chae-sang went to the hospital to investigate the assemblyman and the doctor. She told them that she would put them both in prison, and she didn't forget to wish the assemblyman's son a terrible fate for his father killing another person. After everything was confirmed, Dun Mei's father had his surgery. The team leader told Chae-sang and Sion that Dun Mei was the one who donated her cornea to him. Sion wanted to tell him about his daughter, but he already knew the truth. Hearing his heartfelt story, Sion couldn't hold back her tears. Everyone outside couldn't help but feel uneasy. After the people involved were investigated, the chairman, fearing that his candidacy would be affected, sent people to deal with the situation. Later, Chae-sang and Sion were in the cremation room, visiting a little girl. Sion said it was her niece and that her brother had been convicted of murder. Chae-sang was incredibly curious but didn't dare ask. Suddenly, he received a phone call informing him that the body of the assemblyman representing the party had been found. Arriving at the scene, they learned that Do E-suk had also died the previous night from a food allergy that led to suffocation. Sion immediately guessed that Do Sichon was responsible. Sion then went to Do Sichon's place and made a scene. She said he was involved in organ trafficking and that if he became mayor, the city would become rotten. However, Do Sichon remained indifferent, asking if she would remain a police officer forever or become another body found. Back at the office, Chae-sang called the team leader to ask about Sion's brother. He lied, saying that he had lost a part of his memory after the accident and needed the team leader to explain the story to him. He recounted that the city wanted to rebuild its infrastructure, leading to a tense conflict between the residents and Chairman Du Sixian. The residents' protests were useless, but Sion's brother stood up and spoke out. As a result, he was targeted by Du Sixian. He was working as a doctor at a children's welfare institute. One day, Sion went to the institute and found it in ruins. She saw her brother cowering in a corner. He said Du Sixian had sent gangsters to intimidate him and told her to investigate if anything happened to him. After buying groceries and returning home, Sion encountered a man in black and fought him. He hit her on the head with a flower pot and ran away. Entering the house, she saw blood everywhere. All the children in the room were murdered. She ran out in fear, and as she did, the room exploded. Back in the present, Che Sang was recalling these events and looking at Sion with a heartbroken expression. The morning news was reporting on a famous pharmacist named Pa Yu. As he was getting off the plane, he was greeted by Chairman Du Sixian, who seemed to be very close to him. However, Che Sang didn't look happy to see him. Du Sixian continued to put on a show in front of the reporters. The scene then shifted to Che Sang arriving at the office and meeting his subordinate. Suddenly, his body stiffened and he started clutching his chest. In his mind, he saw an image of his real body undergoing electroconvulsive therapy. When he opened his eyes again, he was in a hospital. They said he had fainted and advised him to go home and rest. When he learned that he was in the same hospital as his subordinate, who was in an accident, he ran to his room. His subordinate's wife told him that the doctor said her husband could become a vegetable. Hearing this, Che Sang feared that his real body might have the same problem, so he was very anxious. In another scene, a mother was standing in the rain waiting for her daughter to come home from school. The girl encountered a man in black carrying a bag with a hammer. The next day, Che Sang and Sion had just finished meeting with a client when they received a phone call. When they arrived at the scene, they found the body of a female student. The murder method was the same as the one at the Welfare Institute years ago, so everyone thought it was the same perpetrator. After investigating the mother's house, they learned that her neighborhood was also being redeveloped to build a research facility. They didn't have anywhere else to go, so they hadn't moved out. Earlier, Chairman Du Sixian had come and said harsh words to them. Hearing this, everyone began to understand the situation. Sion recalled the case of her brother from years ago. When they were investigating Du Sixian, he had insulted her brother, making her furious. Che Sang went to the lawyer's office and said things that surprised the lawyer. Realizing that Che Sang was no longer easy to manipulate, the lawyer gave him a favorable employment contract. Che Sang then thought that if he couldn't return, he would have to choose his life in this world. Back at the office, his boss was scolding everyone for not managing the crime scene well, allowing a clip of the victim's family being attacked to spread online. All suspicions fell on Sion's brother Suo because he had disappeared when the incident occurred. Sion said she believed the cases were all related to the chairman because the locations where they happened were all within the construction plan of his projects. Che Sang was lost in thought about the lawyer's proposal when his boss turned to him and asked for his opinion. He just smiled and said he wanted to resign as a prosecutor, which surprised everyone. Sion's colleague asked about Che Sang's decision, but Sion said she didn't know. Seeing Che Sang's phone there, she opened it and saw the lawyer's message confirming the contract with Che Sang. After talking to his boss, he decided to let Che Sang go, but only after he solved this case. Back at home, the couple had a fight. Che Sang said he was tired of this kind of life. Sion was very upset and didn't expect him to say such things. The next day, everyone went to the crime scene to investigate, but they suddenly received news that a prosecutor was holding a press conference to announce the case. Returning to the office, they found Che Sang standing on the podium, promising to find the perpetrator. Sion then scolded him for revealing the victim's family's identity without any leads. He said he would use the media as a strategy to gather intelligence. From there, they would have more leads. Receiving intelligence from an old lady, they went to question her. She told them that she had seen 3 black cars entering the construction site that night, taking a girl with them. She followed them out of curiosity and saw them brutally attacking the girl. She even saw the chairman standing there. They wanted to check the surveillance footage, but she said there wasn't any. Reporting back to Che Sang, they were told to fake an investigation, which angered Sion. The couple took their daughter to an amusement park and sat outside to talk. Sion asked him why he had changed, becoming a wicked person with irresponsible talk and choosing the wrong path. Che Sang said that a man's responsibility to his family weighed heavily on him. He also said, "What would you do if you were alone later?" Sion thought he would leave her and their daughter. Their daughter accidentally overheard this, thinking her father was leaving her and her mother, and started crying and throwing a tantrum. Sang panicked and quickly carried his daughter away in front of everyone. The next day, they went to the chairman's company to investigate a hit-and-run accident that was connected to him. He intentionally mentioned the case of Sion's brother from years ago, which annoyed her. However, the team leader beside her held her back. He didn't forget to taunt the chairman, promising that he would make the perpetrator kneel down and apologize. The scene shifted to everyone sitting in the office when some people who were called supervisors came in and said someone had reported Sion. They were there to investigate the relationship between Sion and her brother Suo. The boss was only now learning about their relationship and reproached Sang and the team leader for hiding it from him for so many years. He said that Sion would be temporarily suspended until the investigation was over. She could also be accused of intentionally obstructing the investigation by providing false testimony. Sang called the lawyer and told him not to touch his wife. He then started a battle with the lawyer. He sent someone to steal the memory card from the chairman's car to use as evidence in the investigation, but when they watched the video, they didn't find the victim, but another girl. At the same time, the team leader returned and brought the evidence he had gathered, confirming the information about the suspect. But when they got to his house, no one was there. They also found bottles of medicine that were similar to the evidence collected in Sion's brother's case years ago. Sang held the bottle of medicine in his hand and remembered that Sion had also brought him a similar bottle and asked him to investigate the user. However, since the investigation had been publicly concluded, he lied to her and said no one used the medicine, which disappointed her immensely. Back at the office, they heard Sion talking to her subordinate in the room. They went in to see, and she told them she had found a new lead. After reviewing the video that had gone viral online, she noticed a problem with the camera angle and decided to analyze it. Sion, after listening, realized that the victim's sister had epilepsy. They also realized that she was the one who filmed the video, so they decided to find her first. When they arrived at the house, they didn't find the sister. The mother was surprised and realized that the suspect was her daughter's close uncle. She also said that after the incident, many people had sent donations to her family, and her daughter was always the one managing them. From this, they confirmed that the suspect was using her daughter to get his hands on the money. They also found a bottle of sedative similar to the one found on the victim. They thought that the next victim would be the sister because the suspect had achieved his goal. Sion guessed that the suspect would carry out his plan at the construction site, so everyone went there. While looking for him, they suddenly encountered him and chased after him. Realizing he was surrounded, he said some very strange things and then jumped off the construction site, dying instantly. Everyone was shocked, and the beautiful girl was killed by him. After receiving her child's body, the mother cried in front of the reporters. Suddenly, Sion noticed that the mother's shirt was on backwards. Before, when they had met, she wasn't wearing it like that. Back at the prosecutor's office, everyone met and discussed their findings about the mother. All suspicions shifted to her. The young employee showed everyone the malicious comments on social media from an account that always called the mother a fake and said she had pretended to be a nurse to manipulate many children. At first, the boss didn't want to investigate because the leads were unclear, but after hearing everyone's deductions, he agreed to continue investigating the mother. That night, Sion couldn't sleep and said she was always thinking about the case of her brother from years ago, and there was no way to investigate it. Sang comforted her, saying she didn't need to be strong. Hearing these words, Sion hugged Sang and cried. The next day, Sang was invited to a private meeting with the lawyer and the chairman at the office. They wanted him to join their side and offered him 90% of the company's shares and commission. Sang asked what would happen if he refused. The chairman began to threaten him, saying he would make his daughter watch as he arrested her father. While thinking about the chairman's words, Sang received a phone call informing him that they had found the person who made the malicious comments online about the mother. After finding that person, they heard that the mother had always been very dedicated to her work. She always used her mouth to suction out the children's noses to help them breathe. However, after that, the children all died for unknown reasons. There was also a time when she was seen in the bathroom learning how to cry. After the hospital received a report, they wanted to cover it up and fired her. Everyone then sat down to analyze the clues they had gathered. They discovered that she bought a lot of baby formula, But there were no children at the orphanage where she worked, except for the one child she was taking care of. The girl had a condition that required her to limit her contact with dairy products. Chae-sang also guessed that her next target was the little girl she was taking care of. Not only that, she also went live on social media, pretending to cry to gain sympathy from people. The scene shifted to her house. She had just finished her live stream when she took out the milk and tried to force-feed it to the little girl, who was terrified. Then she ran outside, screaming and attracting attention, crying and saying she wouldn't live if anything happened to the girl. At the same time, reporters from the TV station arrived with their cameras and said that she knew the girl couldn't have anything related to milk, but still gave her milk from the store. Everyone around realized that she was doing this intentionally. Police cars arrived soon after. She stood up, her face filled with fear and confusion. She stopped crying and screaming. She received an arrest warrant from the prosecutor's office but tried to defend herself. The police then showed her a video. It turned out that the hacker at the police station had hacked into her computer and turned on the live streaming function. All her actions with her daughter were recorded and became evidence against her. Back in the interrogation room, Chae-sang repeatedly criticized her, making her go crazy. The next morning, Chae-sang received a call from the lawyer about the chairman's previous proposal and said he would wait for his decision by 5 p.m. After thinking about the chairman's threats, Chae-sang made his decision. At the police station, the female offender was eating her meal, feeling uncomfortable because of the handcuffs. A police officer removed them for her. After seeing the officer put his gun back in the drawer and turn around, she seized the opportunity and took the gun when no one was looking. She took a hostage to escape the police station. After getting outside, she captured Sion's daughter. She then called Chae-sang, threatening him and saying she would deal with the girl in half an hour, leaving him unable to forget her. After determining the location where she would commit the crime, the prosecution team and the police drove there. When they arrived, they saw her about to kill Sion's daughter. Chae-sang distracted her and signaled the team leader and his team to shoot the table leg, causing her to miss. As she swung her hammer up, Sion punched her in the mouth. She was then arrested, and Sion's daughter was rescued. After surviving the danger, Chae-sang spent more time with his family, playing with his daughter. While in the bathroom at work, he overheard his two subordinates talking. He learned that the reason why the chairman wasn't bothering him was because the team leader had stopped him. While standing in his office, lost in thought about what he had heard, his subordinate barged into the room, startling him. She said that some officers who were on duty had been stabbed and hospitalized. Remembering that Sion was also on duty, he rushed to see how she was. He ran to her hospital room and saw Sion in bed. Chae-sang cried in pain. While he was emotional, he noticed Sion snoring. When she woke up, she said she wasn't injured. It was the team leader who had been hurt. He had protected her from a knife during a fight with the criminal. Seeing them laughing and talking happily, Chae-sang felt incredibly uncomfortable. At the radio station, the chairman and pharmacist Pai-yu were being interviewed, but Pai-yu seemed to dislike it. After the interview, the chairman took him to a vacant lot. He began to humiliate Pai-yu and even slapped him. Sion and the team leader had been following them all along and were standing nearby. They captured pictures of the scene. They almost got caught, and Sion even dropped her police ID card. Chae-sang took his daughter to school, but the teacher called him back and said she wanted to report a missing girl. He said that they couldn't investigate a case of a girl simply being absent from school. But he learned that a few days ago, the girl's mother had sent a message asking for her to be excused from school, but when the teacher went to the house, she found out that the girl's mother had died. There was also a woman staying there who had taken the girl and disappeared. After having someone check, they learned from the landlady that the girl's mother had purchased life insurance with her own name, Pak Soo-hai, but the beneficiary was the woman staying with them, named Lee Dae-sun. After hearing that Pak Soo-hai worked at Pai-yu's research institute, Sion decided to go there and ask for more information about her. Her colleague said that when Soo-hai met Dae-sun, she saw that she was pitiable and helped her. But then, Dae-sun became dependent on Soo-hai. After learning that Soo-hai was about to quit her job at the company, Dae-sun demanded to go with her. Out of kindness, Soo-hai took her along. Asking about Dae-sun's previous residence, Sion learned that she stayed at a welfare institute funded by Chairman Do-sishin's company. Hearing this, Chae-sang and Sion were stunned. The team leader and his subordinate investigated further and learned from a neighbor that Daesum often dressed like Suhai and was happy when people mistook her for Suhai, like a crazy person. The chairman discovered that Sion was following him and was furious. Fearing that his dark secrets would be exposed, he sent people to arrange for Sion's disposal. Ever since he saw his wife and the team leader being friendly with each other, Chae-sang always thought there was something shady between them. While reviewing files, his wife came in. Seeing her receive a message and leave, he followed behind and saw them go into a house together. Out of curiosity, he opened the door and saw everyone celebrating with fireworks. He didn't understand what was happening, and then everyone said they were celebrating the client in his case being discharged from the hospital. He didn't know who it was, and then the man walked out. He was the same person who had been involved in the violence in the real world and whom Chae-sang had forced to confess. In this world, Chae-sang had helped him clear his name. They were celebrating today to thank Shasan. The next day, Chae-sang and Sion went to the hospital where Suhai was confirmed to have died. The doctor said there were no suspicious signs on her body, but the child and the woman who went with her were very suspicious. The little girl kept mistaking her aunt and mother, and she was scolded by the woman. Sion said, could it be that she made the girl change her way of addressing them? At this point, Chae-sang also understood that Daesum's motive for killing wasn't about the insurance money, but to steal Suhai's life and become her. The chairman, for some reason, went to find Pai-yu and tried to stab him with a shard of glass. He choked Pai-yu and said he had to serve him. Seeing him go crazy, Pai-yu suddenly called him father and said that half of his blood belonged to him. It seemed that the chairman knew about this but didn't accept the truth. He called Pai-yu a filthy creature for daring to call him father. Pai-yu said that if the chairman killed him, the whole country would know that he was his son. After returning to the prosecutor's office and discussing the information they gathered, the boss decided to publicize Daesum's information on national television to find her. The chairman was very worried about Pai-yu's threats earlier, so he sent people to prepare to harm and eliminate him to prevent future troubles. At the office, the boss was happily calling his daughter when he suddenly jumped back, startling his subordinate and causing her to spill her coffee. She chased after him to scold him, but unfortunately, she spilled coffee on his shirt. Two subordinates came in and said that he had diarrhea. They went in to report that they had found the person who had previously assaulted Daesum. It was Suhai's ex-husband and his brother. This surprised everyone. After finding her ex-husband, they learned that they had assaulted her because they mistook her for their wife. He also said that Suhai had ruined his life. She had stolen his stamp to borrow a large sum of money for her cosmetics business. His daughter once told him that her mother and aunt always wore the same makeup. He said that Suhai must have intentionally created a copy of herself. Chae-sang and Sion were at a theater to investigate Daesum's boyfriend. The theater director said that they were very much in love, but after her boyfriend went to Daesum's house one time, he constantly avoided her. He also gave them a handwritten letter from Daesum. The police obtained a death note from Suhai and showed it to Sion. Suddenly, Sion realized that Daesum's handwriting and Suhai's handwriting were very similar. Seeing this, Chae-sang showed the director a photo of the three of them together and asked who was Daesum. The director pointed to Suhai. At this point, Chae-sang understood the situation and said that the person who stole someone else's life was Suhai, not Daesum. After approaching Daesum, Suhai wanted to make her identical to herself and always went out as Daesum. She then killed Daesum to live her life, thinking that no one would notice with Daesum's identity. The scene shifted to a garden. Her boyfriend was tied to a chair with tools and Suhai was preparing to deal with him. Hearing him call her Suhai, she went crazy and said she was Daesum. Then she choked him. She knelt down and begged him to love her, but he called her crazy. She stood up and grabbed a syringe, making him terrified. The police arrived at the scene. They rushed in, and she threatened them. She was going crazy, yelling and despairing. Seeing this, Chae-sang tried to persuade her, saying she shouldn't let her daughter lose her mother. After hearing these words, she calmed down and lowered the needle. The police rushed in and apprehended her. After asking her friend to investigate a hospital that the chairman always went to on weekends and prohibited anyone from entering, Sion decided to investigate it alone. Sion was in a patient's room when the chairman and his people arrived, making her very nervous. She hid in a room but overheard the chairman wanting to kill the patient. She was about to approach to see what was going on when she accidentally made a noise. The pastor, who followed the chairman, went to check the rooms. Sion crawled under the bed, but almost got caught. At that moment, the fire alarm suddenly rang, helping her escape. She quickly ran out and was greeted by the team leader. Back at the office, she was scolded. Chae-sang was sitting outside when Sion came back. She ran to hug him, exhausted. Chae-sang comforted her and held her hand. He said, "Thank you for choosing me. I promise I'll make you happy because you're the dream of my life." They kissed in the middle of the courtyard, witnessed by envious viewers like you and me. The next day, Sion received the Outstanding Police Officer Award. That evening, she came home to find her husband had bought her shoes and invited her to go hiking and camping, which made her very happy. The chairman, through his people, learned that Sion had appeared at the hospital. Fearing that she would dig up his secrets, he sent people to make her disappear. That evening, while sitting at home, Sion suddenly received a text message saying that it would tell her information about the person she wanted to investigate, so she should go to the address provided, but she had to go alone. Sion went to an abandoned house. As she entered, she was attacked by a man. She managed to subdue him, but then she was hit on the head with a stick by another man and collapsed. He held her down while another man with a syringe injected her. They dragged her inside. Chae-sang woke up and couldn't find his wife. He was extremely worried. Her phone had been switched off. After finding Sion's location, Chae-sang went there. When he saw her tied to a chair, he was knocked unconscious. When he woke up, they were sitting opposite each other. The man in black took a hammer out of his bag and was about to hit Sion on the head. She was terrified, and Chae-sang pleaded with the man. His emotions overwhelmed him, and suddenly his body woke up in the real world. Chae-sang woke up, still thinking he was in the other world. After the lawyer and his subordinate convinced him that it was reality, not a dream, he realized he was back in the real world. The team leader and his colleagues were interrogating a criminal when they received information that a body had been found in Cheodon. Chae-sang suddenly thought that events in both worlds were happening at the same time and location. In the other world, Sion was harmed. Fearing that she was also in danger in reality, he told his subordinate to investigate whether there were any murders in Cheodon. As the police team was about to leave, they received a notice that the body they had discovered was someone they knew. After confirming that there had been a murder in that area, Chae-sang worried that it was Sion's body. He told his subordinate to drag him there. At the crime scene, they had exhumed the body and confirmed that it was Sion's brother. She stood there, stunned, and everyone was heartbroken. When Chae-sang arrived, Sion was very cold and asked him how he knew about it and came here. Chae-sang still couldn't believe they had found her brother's body. Sion was also confused as to how he knew it was her brother and thought he was involved in the case. Chae-sang had forgotten that they were enemies in reality and didn't know how to explain what he knew. After returning to the hospital, Sion wanted to talk to Chae-sang. When she arrived, she asked him how he knew about all those things. He said he dreamed it. The more he explained, the less she believed him. She told him she felt disgusted as if she had known and been with him all these years, getting used to the happiness in the other world. Seeing her attitude, Chae-sang couldn't help but cry. Chairman Do Sik-hyun also received information that Suho's body had been found and the case might be reinvestigated. He was furious because the mayoral election was about to take place, and this happened right in front of him. The team leader received a report that several other bodies had been found in the area where the first body was discovered, all victims of recent murders. Chae-sang sat by the lake, remembering the happy days he had spent in the other world with Sion, along with the worry he had for her safety in this world. In this reality, he was still playing the role of the lawyer for the opposing side. Later, he was called out by his senior lawyer, who introduced him to Chairman Do Sik-hyun. Unlike before, when he had to defend the bad things, this time he directly confronted Do Sik-hyun, saying he hoped he would turn himself in because he wouldn't help him with such filthy deeds anymore. He didn't forget to taunt him, calling him a suspect in the murders. Hearing these words, Do Sik-hyun was shocked. The lawyer was also very surprised and awkward at Chae-sang's words. Chae-sang then resigned from his position, said he would see Do Sik-hyun again, and walked away. Since discovering her brother's body, Sion had been like a lost soul. The team leader was very worried. He then invited her to go for a fight to release her stress. After a while, Sion collapsed and burst into tears, letting out all the tears she had been holding back. He then took her home. In front of her door, the team leader hugged her and spoke about what was in its heart, leaving her speechless and unsure how to react. Che sang at home, always thinking about the happy moments with his little family, even imagining Sion and his daughter in the house. When he realized it was an illusion, he cried. The next day, a task force was set up to investigate the case of the dead cargo. Then the head of the task force was introduced, Che sang. Everyone was very surprised to see him, especially Sion. Everyone in the office couldn't accept Che sang becoming the head of the investigation. They'd all disliked the things he had done to help criminals get away with lesser charges. The chairman's grandmother went to his office, opened the safe, and found a hammer in a box, the murder weapon from the cases they had discovered. She was terrified. At the same time, the lawyer entered, startling her. Seeing her keep looking at the cabinet next to it, the lawyer suspected something was wrong. Che sang was in his office when the head of the department came in and told him that although he didn't know why he was here, he would be watching and observing him. Che sang didn't need to do anything but stay put as a scarecrow and then leave. He wanted to explain, but he didn't know how to convince his boss. Sion sat in her room, thinking about Che sang's strange actions. She was very confused and didn't understand why he always appeared where she was. When Sion got home, she saw a gift box in front of her door. When she opened it, it was full of gummy candies. It included a message saying that the gift was from the new neighbor next door. Later, she planned to take the gift to the new neighbor, but she was shocked to realize that it was Che sang. Seeing Che sang with a completely different, goofy personality, she was completely bewildered. A group of aunties came to her house for a housewarming party. Sion couldn't believe her eyes as she watched Che sang chat with them. When she returned home, she still didn't understand and asked why he had moved next to her house. Che sang deliberately teased her, saying it was she who was following him, which made her angry. The next day, at the prosecutor's office, the head of the department rushed in, saying that Chairman Du Sitkin had been summoned for interrogation. Che sang said he had called him in, which shocked everyone. In the interrogation room, Du Sitkin sat there listening to Che sang speak, indifferent. Che sang, on the other hand, constantly brought up the cases from the past and said his target was Du Sitkin. From that moment on, Che sang officially challenged Du Sitkin. While on her way home, Sion felt someone following her. Suddenly, the person rushed towards her. She kicked him with her foot. When she turned around, it was Che sang, and she had kicked him in the nose, making it bleed. Sion then took Che sang to her house. Sitting in the familiar room, Che sang remembered the memories with his daughter in the other world. After applying medicine to him, Sion chased him away, but he tried to go into the bathroom to unclog the toilet. He even pretended to care about her by buying snacks and placing them next to the table so she wouldn't bump into them. Sion couldn't understand his actions and kept asking him what his purpose was, but Che sang replied that since he had a second chance at life, he wanted to live more righteously and decide his own destiny. After meeting to discuss the clues they had gathered, the investigation team determined that the weapon could be a hammer. They went to the area near the crime scene to investigate pig slaughterhouses because they had hammers similar to the murder weapon. They found a pig slaughterhouse owned by an old man. They learned that he had been working there for a long time and asked him about the first case in the area. The old man recounted that there was a woman who sold herself, always wearing blonde hair to attract customers. She had a son, but when he was in high school, one day he came home from school and saw his mother lying dead in the yard. After they held a funeral for his mother, he moved away. Che sang and his colleagues went to find the chairman's wife. She seemed to avoid them and said she would report back to him. However, Che sang had a copy of her medical records showing signs of assault. This could be used to rescue her from the chairman's grasp. When she heard him say that the chairman was involved in the murders, she was shocked. Seeing that she was unwilling to cooperate, Che sang said this was her last chance to escape with the son because once the chairman was elected mayor, she would never escape. He also said she could die at his hands and never see her son again. The mayor was still pretending to win people's trust to increase his chances of winning the election. Back at home, he continued to scold his wife and beat his son for embarrassing him. Che sang was on his way home when he saw Sion stumbling out of a car, drunk. He followed her. As they approached her home, a man holding a beer bottle charged at her, trying to hit her. She used her hand to block it, and Che sang rushed forward. The man fell. When Sion woke up in the hospital, she saw Che sang next to her. She asked why he hadn't disappeared and why he was hurting her. He said he would always protect her. The pharmacist Pin Yu hired someone to bring a girl to a designated location where he drugged her and took her to the laboratory. As Sion and Che Sang were leaving the hospital, they were met by the team leader who had feelings for Sion. Seeing Che Sang being so close to her, the team leader slammed on the brakes, causing Che Sang to almost hit his head. After Sion went home, the team leader asked why Che Sang was always around her. Che Sang said he shouldn't worry. As soon as the chairman's case was solved, he would disappear. Che Sang thanked the team leader for his concern and protection for Sion and hoped he would continue to be by her side. The team leader didn't understand these words. The chairman was furious as his votes were constantly decreasing due to the new case that had been uncovered. His lawyer suggested that he should meet with the chief prosecutor of the Special Investigation Department to get help, but the chairman agreed to meet. Meanwhile, the chairman's wife was called to her son's school for a meeting. The teacher informed her that her son had been bullying his classmates. He said that whenever the boy disliked someone, he would hit the person next to his friend. The wife recalled the time when she hit someone in front of her son and realized it might have influenced him, causing him to act this way. After finding the information about the house where the blonde woman who sold herself was murdered, the team leader and Sion went there to investigate further. Sion was checking the situation when she heard a noise. Someone ran out, and she tried to trip him but ended up falling herself. It was Che Sang, who had bumped his head on a pole, causing his nose to bleed. The team leader then returned with a woman who lived nearby. She told them that the woman named Chai Dang Hai lived in the house and earned money by selling her body, always boasting about her son, who was the offspring of a prestigious family. The woman added that every year, twice a year, in summer and winter, a luxurious private car would arrive at the door at midnight to visit the mother and son, but she couldn't see the driver's face. She said the woman was still alive, not dead as rumors suggested, but she was no longer able to take care of herself. After returning home, the wife asked her son why he acted that way. He said he had learned from what he saw. Whenever he saw stupid and weak people, he felt filled with rage and pain. He said he was sorry because he was a mother without strength. The scene shifts to the prosecutor's office. The next morning, everyone was having fun early in the morning when suddenly, the chairman's wife appeared, surprising everyone. Che Sang said he had made a deal with the wife, which got him scolded by the head of the department for acting on his own. He said the price for her providing evidence was the future of her son and her escape from her abusive husband. After entering the interrogation room, the wife asked Che Sang how he planned to pull himself out of this situation, considering the possibility of her escaping from the chairman. Che Sang said he knew a chairman who owned a private island in the Philippines, and once he had the evidence, he would arrange for her and her son to escape to the Philippines. When he was sure everything was settled, he would come forward and help her get a divorce. She then told him she saw a hammer in the safe that was covered in blood. He asked when she could bring the evidence, and she said she would bring it tonight, as the chairman was meeting with the chief prosecutor and wouldn't answer his phone. Sion objected to acting immediately, as it was too dangerous for the person providing evidence. But Che Sang said that if there was no better option, they should go ahead with it. That night, the wife used the excuse of arranging flowers in the chairman's office to enter and retrieve the evidence. Sion and the team leader drove behind her. While driving, the wife received a picture of her son being abducted and was extremely panicked. She received a call from an unknown number, which was Pin Yu. It turned out Pin Yu had noticed something was off with the wife and had sent people to follow her. He knew she was helping Che Sang. He took a step ahead and kidnapped her son to threaten her. When they received the news of the wife and son's disappearance, everyone was extremely panicked. When the wife arrived at the location, Pin Yu demanded he confessed that he was the chairman's illegitimate son, a secret he had hidden from her for years. He recounted his miserable life with his money-hungry mother, how she clung to wealthy men and got pregnant to extort money from them. He lived a life of abuse and neglect from his own mother. And it was he who had attacked his own mother. Pin Yu then used the very hammer that the wife had brought to knock her unconscious. Che Sang was sitting in his office when he received the news and rushed to the scene. Witnessing the wife lying dead on the floor, he couldn't believe his eyes. The chairman ran to Pin Yu and saw him covered in blood. Pin Yu was still smiling and said, "This time, I protected Dad." The chairman grabbed Pin Yu by the neck and demanded to know why he had done this. Pin Yu responded that the wife had brought evidence to the police station to report the chairman's crimes. It seemed as though the chairman was psychologically manipulated by Pin Yu and couldn't resist. After his wife's death, the chairman seemed emotionless and continued his election campaign, ultimately winning. He continued to plan to cover up his dirty deeds. In the interrogation room, Sion and the team leader were questioning two captured criminals. They confessed to committing all the crimes with a defiant attitude. Sion, enraged, lunged at them, but was restrained. At the prosecutor's office, Sion went into Che-sang's office and accused him of being responsible for everything. Che-sang explained that he did everything he did because he didn't want Sion to get hurt. As they argued, the team leader rushed in and turned on the TV, showing news reports of Che-sang being investigated for legal manipulation and forgery of evidence. Later, Che-sang and his boss were summoned to the chief prosecutor's office, where they were berated by the chairman. They were then dismissed by the chief prosecutor. Pin Yu continued his drug research on himself with an unfazed and nonchalant attitude. In the car garage, he saw someone holding a hammer. Suddenly, he remembered the day he attacked all the people in the orphanage. He then went to the chairman and offered to help him. He handed him the weapon, saying, "This is a deal. If you don't agree, take this to the police." Sion sat in her office, remembering when she went to the hospital to visit the chairman's wife and her son, but found Che-sang there instead, apologizing to the boy. He even knelt down, expressing deep remorse. When Sion returned home from the office, she noticed footprints and sensed a danger. She drew her weapon for self-defense and followed the footprints to the bedroom. She found Che-sang drunk and asleep on her bed. When he opened his eyes and saw Sion, he thought he was back in the other world. He embraced her and apologized for not protecting her. Sion didn't understand what was happening but didn't resist. The next morning, they went to the office and found many people protesting and shouting insults at Che-sang. The student who had been framed for violence by Che-sang charged at him, but the team leader intervened. Once the student was taken away, Che-sang saw his tearful, broken state and remembered the happy family he had known in the other world. He felt ashamed of the things he had done in this world. After the incident, the team leader told Che-sang that their goals were different from the beginning. He questioned why Che-sang was protecting the bad guys while they were bearing the brunt of the consequences. Che-sang, filled with shame, admitted he had no face left. In a meeting, the boss told everyone that Che-sang would likely be indicted for abuse of power in a week. The special investigation team would be disbanded, but he decided to give Che-sang a chance. He said before the mayor's inauguration ceremony, Che-sang must solve the case. Immediately after, they received news about the identity of the blonde woman, Dang Hai. The team leader and his subordinates went to the hospital where she was staying. The doctor told them that she had suffered a brain hematoma due to a severe concussion and was experiencing aphasia. She had difficulty thinking and speaking. When they entered the room, they found her unconscious. When they brought up the case, she began to panic and lost control. Che-sang and Sion went to a hypnotist. Che-sang wanted to use hypnosis to recover lost memories that could help solve the case. After being hypnotized, Che-sang remembered everything that happened that night in the other world alongside Sion. From searching for her to being beaten and tied up and then seeing the man with the bat tattoo. Sion, standing beside him, was stunned by his revelations. Due to his excitement, the doctor woke him up. Back at the office, Sion asked Che-sang what happened during the hypnosis. Pressed for an answer, Che-sang said that while unconscious, he had lived in a different world. After asking a nurse if Dang Hai had any family, the team leader suddenly discovered that the hospital was funded by the chairman and Pin Yu. Back at the office, Sion still didn't believe Che-sang's story. She told him he was crazy and should seek mental treatment after the accident. After the team compiled all the information from their investigation, they learned that Dang Hai had named her son after the Sun Ho company owned by the man. They investigated and discovered that the company was previously owned by the chairman, Du-sik. They'd also found the song that she constantly hummed. When Sion heard it, she was stunned because it was exactly the same song Che-sang had sung while being hypnotized. The chairman was planning to eliminate Pin Yu, who was his biggest obstacle. But he didn't realize that Pin Yu had planted a listening device in his room and heard the entire plan. Pin Yu said he would teach him a lesson. The investigation team found a man who had worked at Sion's brother's orphanage. They'd brought him in for questioning. He recounted that a boy named Sun Ho had registered to stay at the orphanage. After his arrival, many strange things happened. Farm animals were found dead with their heads smashed. Soon after, other children in the orphanage were injured. He witnessed Sion's brother questioning Sunho, asking if he was responsible for all the incidents. However, Sunho's reaction sent chills down their spines. He then fell down the stairs, leading everyone to believe the headmaster had pushed him. The headmaster was ostracized and branded a devil in disguise. After hearing this, Sion concluded that the orphanage incident wasn't caused by the chairman, but by Sunho. Chae-sang called 2 of his colleagues to the hospital where Dang-hai was staying to steal internal data. When he arrived, he heard a familiar song and saw Pin-yu singing it. He approached him and pretended to strike up a conversation. As Pin-yu was about to leave, Chae-sang called out his name, Sunho, causing him to freeze. He then shared all the clues he had found with Pin-yu. Pin-yu warned Chae-sang to protect the people he wanted to protect, as they might be attacked in the same way. This angered Chae-sang, who grabbed Pin-yu by the collar. As he closed the door, Pin-yu revealed his fear, not understanding how Chae-sang knew his secret. Back at the police station, Chae-sang learned that Sion was going to receive an award the next day. He was worried because in the other world, an incident had occurred on the same day. Seeing Chae-sang standing alone, Sion asked if something was wrong. Chae-sang simply told her to go to a safe place far away after receiving her award. When Sion asked why, he didn't answer. He embraced her, visibly anxious. The next day, Chae-sang and his colleagues discovered new evidence and were on their way to secure it. On the way, Chae-sang called the team leader and asked him to stay with Sai on all day to protect her. As they entered the elevator, he encountered a man with a bat tattoo and felt something was amiss. Before he could react, Chae-sang was knocked unconscious and tied up. Sion then received a call from a colleague informing her that Chae-sang had been kidnapped while searching for evidence. She remembered what she'd heard during Chae-sang's hypnosis session and was filled with fear and panic. Pin-yu was in the chairman's office, threatening him to hand over the company's management. Otherwise, he would release a video of Chae-sang being executed in the chairman's election room. The video would become top news within 30 minutes. The police received the information and were driving to the location where they thought Chae-sang was being held. They saw people approaching and mobilized all their forces to fight and stop them. They fought like in a kung fu movie. Sion was hit with a stick by one of them. The team leader protected her with a knife and told her to hurry and save Chae-sang, but the door was blocked by several men. She used a chair to break the glass door and rushed in to untie Chae-sang. Chae-sang's subordinate brought the evidence related to the case to the office and presented the clues to his boss. The next day, the chairman went to his office and was surrounded by reporters who questioned him about the previous night's events. All the investors involved in the chairman's projects refused to answer his calls. Seeing the situation spiraling out of control, the lawyer suggested destroying all documents related to the chairman. Chae-sang returned from the hospital, and his subordinate was overjoyed to see him safe. His boss called everyone to a meeting and showed them the documents found in the victims' bags. There was a note addressed to Chae-sang. Before the chairman's wife died, she had prepared these documents to help Chae-sang investigate in case something happened to her. After analyzing the gathered clues, everyone decided to investigate the pastor's charity fund. When they arrived, they found his accomplices preparing to destroy documents. Chae-sang went to the chairman's office, wanting him to cooperate in the investigation. Meanwhile, the pastor was arrested. In the interrogation room, no matter what they said, the chairman insisted he knew nothing. Seeing this, Chae-sang told his subordinate to turn off the recording device. He said there was a way to keep the chairman safe: blame everything on Pin-yu. Pin-yu was still stubbornly testing his bioengineered drugs on humans. He told his subordinate to find a place to hide and clear his name. Sion was almost home when she met some women from her neighborhood. They dragged her inside and prayed for Chae-sang's safety. When Sion reached the front gate, Chae-sang said that if one day her hatred for him subsided, he would tell her about the other world, how happy they were, how much he loved her, and how adorable their daughter was. Chae-sang confronted Pin-yu and played him a recording of his conversation with the chairman, where he said he would pin everything on Pin-yu. But actually, the recording had been edited by his subordinate to execute his plan to break them up. After listening to the recording, Pin-yu seemed frightened. The chairman was persuading Pin-yu's right-hand man to betray him, and it seemed he agreed. He even arranged a funeral for Pin-yu with reporters waiting. The chairman went to meet with Pin-yu. He didn't expect that his right-hand man would betray him. Sang-'s two subordinates were waiting in ambush and called his team. The chairman ordered someone to hold Pin Yu and administer the drug to dispose of him. Suddenly, the situation turned upside down. Everyone around the chairman was actually Pin Yu's undercover agents. The chairman was shocked and terrified. Pin Yu accused him of not taking care of him and leaving him to live a miserable life. Then he injected the drug into the chairman's neck. The investigation team arrived, but the chairman was already lying motionless on the ground. Immediately after, the two sides engaged in a fierce fight. Taking advantage of the chaos, Pin Yu and his henchmen escaped. Sang pursued them relentlessly, but to no avail. Meanwhile, the boss in the office informed the pastor and the lawyer working under the chairman that he had died and they should confess the truth. After escaping the investigation team, Pin Yu was preparing to board a ship to cross the border, but he still harbored the intention to continue his human experimentation abroad. He instructed his subordinate to bring the girl who had been tested with his medicine and survived, along with him. After the laboratory was abandoned, the girl remained tied up and alone. Sang-'s investigation team discovered the location of the laboratory. At that time, Pin Yu's henchmen arrived and took the girl away. As they were getting into the car, the police arrived, blocking their path and demanding the release of the girl. The police instructed the henchmen to call Pin Yu. Upon learning that the girl, on whom he had spent billions of dollars to test his medicine, had been apprehended by the police, Pin Yu was furious. Soon after returning, Sang was invited to the television station for an interview regarding Pin Yu's case. All the information, along with his crimes, was publicly broadcast on television, and a nationwide warrant for his arrest was issued. Upon returning home, Sang saw smoke billowing from Sion's house. Thinking that the house was on fire, he rushed inside to check. It turned out that she had forgotten to turn off the stove. He found Sion crying silently and could only comfort her. Sion then asked Sang about life in the afterlife, and Sang recounted the happy moments he dreamt of having there. The next morning, when Sion woke up, she heard someone ringing the doorbell. She went to open it and found a bouquet of flowers. As she picked them up and turned to go inside, she saw Pin Yu standing in the yard. Suddenly, she felt dizzy and fainted. Sang, carrying food to Sion, saw that everything was in disarray and went inside to investigate. He immediately guessed that something had happened to her. He went to the prosecution office and shared his suspicions with everyone, predicting that Pin Yu would attack Sion at her old house. When they arrived, they found nothing. Then they received a report that Pin Yu's mother had died in the hospital. It was then that everyone realized they had gone to the wrong place. Pin Yu had taken Sion to the rooftop and tied her up. He was about to attack her when she picked up a shard of glass and knocked him down. Due to the lingering effects of the anesthetic, she couldn't run and fell. Pin Yu dragged her back. Meanwhile, the others were racing up to the rooftop. Sion was about to be struck, but they arrived just in time. The team leader shot Pin Yu in the arm. Pin Yu then attempted to jump off the building and commit suicide, but he was saved by the team leader and Sang. Sion was then given handcuffs to apprehend the murderer of her family. After everything was settled, Sang and Sion visited the grave of his brother's daughter. Afterward, they went for a walk together. Sang said that he wouldn't be by her side anymore and was about to leave when Sion called him back. She said she wanted to be with him for the rest of her life. He had to stay with her until her anger subsided. They embraced each other with overwhelming emotion. All the dangers and hardships had passed, and life returned to peace. The team leader continued his work at a new police station. The boss also found the love of his life. Sion called Sang, informing him that she was in the hospital. He rushed over in a panic, only to learn that she was pregnant. Sang was taken aback and exclaimed, "You got pregnant on the first try." He vowed to take care of her and their child for the rest of his life, and they embraced each other happily, welcoming the new member of their family.